All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to peel back almost 2,000 years of ash to explore a brand new discovery in Pompeii. It's a house that tells an amazing story of wealth, political ambition, and absolutely stunning art. But it's also a story about a deep, tragic irony, where the city's elite debated the very nature of fate, with no idea that their own was literally seconds away.
So picture this. It's 79 AD, and in the days just before Vesuvius erupts, Pompeii is buzzing with politics. And during a recent dig, archaeologists found something wild: the ancient version of campaign posters painted right on the walls of a private house.
And right away, that's a puzzle. See, this kind of political graffiti was usually plastered all over the outside of buildings for everybody to see. Finding it inside, that's really unusual, and it's our first big clue that this was no ordinary home. Okay, so let's get into this puzzle by meeting the man right at the center of the mystery. The guy we're talking about is Aulus Rustius Verus. Now, this was a major political player in Pompeii. He'd already been to the top, held the highest office, and now he was running for a deal, which is a super important job, kind of like being in charge of public works and festivals. This was a man with serious ambition. And that explains why those campaign slogans were inside. In ancient Rome, your house was a key part of your campaign. You didn't just go out and shake hands, you threw these lavish dinners and parties to win over the city's movers and shakers. This discovery proves that this house was basically the bustling headquarters for Verus's whole political operation. But Verus's power and the money he needed to fund his campaign, well, it didn't just come from his rich friends. It came from something much, much more basic: bread. Now this is where things get really fascinating, and frankly, a little dark. The house had a huge commercial bakery inside. Archaeologists even found a millstone with Verus's initials, ARV, carved right into it. So on the surface, his public image was all about patronage, giving bread to the people, winning their votes. But the private reality? It was brutal. The bakery had no door to the street. The only way in or out was a single lockable door from the main house. Even a small window that looked into the residence was barred. This wasn't just a bakery, it was a prison, built to control the enslaved people who were forced to work inside. And as this expert points out, this kind of thing was pretty common, if, morally questionable. Politicians and bakers often worked together, pushing right up to the very edge of the law. Handing out bread was a massive political tool, a very direct way to buy loyalty and secure votes. But this is where the story takes another incredible turn, because the wealth that was generated in that grim bakery, it funded something truly astonishing, hidden away from all the heat and the grime. Archaeologists uncovered a massive 15-meter-long banqueting hall. This was a space built for elite, sophisticated evening parties where Verus would entertain the most important people in Pompeii, and its most incredible feature was the color. The walls were painted a deep, dramatic jet black. Now, this wasn't just some random design choice. It was pure genius for the time. See, the problem with ancient parties was that the oil lamps you needed for light created a ton of soot, which would totally ruin painted walls. The solution? Just paint the walls black to begin with, and you'd never see the stains. But this practical move had this magical side effect. In the flickering lamplight, the mythological figures painted on those dark walls would have looked like they were shimmering and moving. And get this, the effect was completed by the floor. It was a stunning mosaic made of more than 1 million tiny white tiles. This brilliant white surface was designed to catch what little light there was and reflect it back up, lighting up the faces of the guests and the art on the walls. The whole room was a calculated piece of theater. But the real secret of the Black Room wasn't its design. It was the art. The paintings weren't just for decoration. They were a carefully chosen script for the night's conversation. So yeah, this room was basically a stage. As the guests were lying on their couches, drinking wine, the art on the walls was meant to spark these deep, philosophical debates about one of the biggest questions of all: fate. And you can see exactly how it worked. The frescoes showed scenes from the Trojan War. One had Helen meeting Paris, the affair that kicked the whole war off. So the debate for the guests was, did this catastrophic war happen because of individual choices and passion, or were these two just pawns in a game of unavoidable destiny? Then you have another fresco showing the god Apollo with Cassandra. She could see the future, but she was cursed so that nobody would ever believe her. So the question for the room becomes, what's the point of knowing what's going to happen if you're completely powerless to change it? And just from an art history perspective, these things are incredible. They're masterpieces of what we call the Third Pompeian style. Super elegant, super refined. They show that Aulus Rustius Verus was a man with a ton of money and seriously sophisticated taste.
And it's right here that the story takes a sharp, tragic turn. Because while Verus and his rich friends were debating the abstract idea of fate over wine, a very real and very violent fate was closing in on all of them.
I mean, just imagine it. The flickering lights, the deep conversation about choice and destiny, all centered on characters from a war that happened centuries ago.
But just a few meters away, in the harsh reality of the very bakery that funded these parties, 3 people were about to meet their own fate. Inside that bakery, archaeologists found something absolutely heartbreaking: the skeletons of 2 women and a small child. They were discovered right on the floor, which tells us they died in the first moments of the eruption, crushed when the attic above them collapsed under the weight of all the falling pumice stone. We'll probably never know for sure if they were the enslaved workers from the bakery or maybe just strangers who ran inside trying to find shelter. For them, in that moment, fate wasn't some philosophical topic for a dinner party. It was real, it was violent, and it was a collapsing roof.
This is what's so incredible about Pompeii. The ash freezes these stunning contrasts forever. You've got art right next to agony, philosophy right next to a brutal reality. And it just makes you wonder, as archaeologists keep digging, what other powerful human stories are still down there, just waiting to be told.